Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Scramble. I'm your host, Luis Rodriguez. Thank you for being with us. On today's show, we'll discuss the Treasury Department's decision to change the face of the currency, the public health hazard in Utah, and a criminal justice bill that might reach the floor of the Senate, or might not reach the floor of the Senate, Before we begin, let me introduce our panel. First, we have Yesica, a junior majoring in criminal justice. Next, we have Nikiya Berry, a senior majoring in journalism and media studies. Next, we have David Serabian, a UNLV graduate in political science. And finally, we have James Schaeffer, a junior majoring in journalism and media studies. Thank you for being with us.
Of course.
All right. So, the Treasury Department announced yesterday that the new face of the $20 bill will change from former President Andrew Jackson to Harriet Tubman. Tubman was an influential abolitionist during the Civil War and helped runaway slaves escape from the South to the North. What are your opinions with the changes, and was it really necessary? So, Yesica, let's start with you.
Well, personally, I think it's great that they changed it to a woman, not necessarily because of, feminism or anything, but simply because she's not only a woman, she's also Black, and basically just represents our diversity of the United States, of what we were founded on. The whole root of the diversity in the United States started because of people like Harriet Tubman, who risked their lives to help their brothers and sisters become free. And it's not just a simple, let's just put a woman, just a random woman, because they could have put, Eleanor Roosevelt, they could have put Clara Barton, they could have put whoever, but they chose to put someone who was the epitome of diversity and women's suffrage, because back then also women were treated worse than the men slaves. And the fact that a woman was the one to save them, to lead them to freedom, that gave women's status, it elevated it. It gave it that big wow factor, like she's the one who got us there.
Okay. What about you, James? Do you think it was necessary?
Well, Yesica hit the nail on the head. Harriet Tubman is definitely a representation of what America needs to look for, an equal representation of African-American women altogether, and African-Americans. When we're looking at Harriet Tubman, you're not just looking at a woman that led slaves to freedom, thousands of slaves. She also was a Union spy, the first woman to ever lead a military raid, and when she had brain surgery in the later end of her years, she refused anesthesia, because that wasn't the way that soldiers dealt with surgery, and just bit the bullet and dealt with it. If you want to think of the hardliner, someone that definitely represents American values, the American sensibility of being tough, beautiful, and patriotic, you can't get any better than Harriet Tubman. And it does serve an ironic purpose. You have Andrew Jackson, the person who was previous to this bill, or to this banknote, I should say rather, and Andrew Jackson was a known racist, sexist, chronically racist. So
he also owned slaves as well.
And also owned slaves. So it is only fitting for the irony of a president that opposed banknotes to be on the $20 bill to be removed and replaced with an African-American woman. And I think, as Yesica said, only epitomizes only more the need that we have for this and the sufficientness of this choice. It definitely is a win for America and a win for, the Treasury Department. Finally, once again, they're in the news.
Okay. What about you, David? Do you think that Harriet Tubman should be the new face of the $20 bill?
Well, Harriet Tubman certainly made good contributions. I think compared to Eleanor Roosevelt, who as First Lady and then working with the UN and drafting the the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the UN did, I think that was more impactful. That being on the sense that the people that we have on our bills, we have presidents, we have Benjamin Franklin. I think that Eleanor Roosevelt would be more qualified as far as impact is concerned. However, I think it's still sensible that she can be on there. And frankly, James, you're right. Andrew Jackson opposed a central bank. He hated banknotes, and it's actually quite interesting to see why he was on the $20 bill in the first place. But that being said, I don't mind that there's a different face on the $20 bill. I mean, I'm going to spend it either way, no matter whose face is on there.
Right. So what about you, Nikiya? What do you think? And then also, the $20 bill is not the only bill that will be facing changes. You also have the $5 and the $10 bill. And on the back of each note, you will see influential people from the civil rights movement and also from the women's suffrage. So what do you think of the Harriet Tubman change, and with the new, the changes in the back of these, of the $5 and the $10 bill? Do you think it's too many faces? Because of the $5 bill, you have three influential people, and then on the $10 bill, you have five influential ladies from the women's suffrage.
So we're combining faces on one bill?
Correct.
I mean, there's no problem with change. I mean, we don't have to stick with the same look of a bill forever. It's good to maybe get a rotation. I mean, there's a lot of influential people in our history. And with Harriet Tubman, I think it brings a lot of awareness to that time period and what actually happened. Who is Harriet Tubman? People are still learning about it. And yeah, it just brings a lot of awareness, and there's no problem with the change.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
I was going to say, if you want to look at the importance of these figures on these bills, look at for the reason why we switch over from the $10 bill to the $20 bill for the change of Harriet Tubman. Alexander Hamilton, an unnoteworthy figure until the Broadway musical came out and the Treasury Department decided to change.
Unnoteworthy? You're saying Alexander Hamilton, the equivalent of the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the man who founded the Treasury Department and founded what would become the Coast Guard, is insignificant? Oh, come on, James. You got to eat those words.
Sure, I'm very impressed that you took American politics class, but for me, as someone that's more focused in other areas, I would say that Alexander Hamilton doesn't serve a noteworthy successor to someone I should pay mind to on the bill. I mean, heck, who's on the $2 bill? You probably know.
Isn't it Jefferson?
That was Jefferson.
Well, that only serves to serve my point. I don't know who's on a $2 bill, and I'll tell you the average American wouldn't. So
Well,
on
thank
that
you for
point,
showcasing your ignorance, James.
every chance I get, I try to show it as much as I can.
So, you mentioned who's on the $2 bill. With this change with Harriet Tubman, former candidate Ben Carson stated that, I think that Harriet Tubman should be on the $2 bill. Should she be on the $2 bill, or do you think that he just went over line and should just, it was not a statement that he should have said?
We know what place the $2 bill serves, and it's in a jar that we collect and go, ooh, $2 bills. We don't use it for money. We don't use it much for exchange. It's a unnoteworthy bill, I would say, for the most part. And I think most Americans would agree with me. The point you're pointing on with Trump is obviously
No, not Trump, Carson.
Carson. Well, I believe Trump said the same thing as well when he was saying about how putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill is serving to his point of the obviousness of political correctness in the system. Ben Carson said the same thing about the $2 bill. You have a tale of two stories here, I would say. You have Ben Carson and Trump serving one, saying that this is political correctness, serving the point that they've talked about, and Kasich coming out and saying that this is a woman who was, from his words exactly, said that this is an incredible woman who served from a poor state to a great state and was able to showcase a lot of American values.
Now, but with Trump, with your comparison with Trump and Carson, it helps that Carson is backing up Trump. So the person that you're supporting, obviously you're going to state the same things that they're stating.
Right, and he has also been able to outline the two different Trumps that we've seen. Thanks to Carson, we've been able to see the double-sided face of, I guess you could say, the coin of Trump.
Okay.
Some change that you might not want to change. No? Okay, that's all right.
Thank you, James. So, Yesica, like I mentioned earlier, on the $10 bill, you'll have influential ladies from the women's suffrage. Do you think that putting these ladies on the back of the bill is pretty much representing that, men are superior from women?
No, actually. And I think that's a very huge misconception with the whole idea behind feminism. True feminism is not degrading men. True feminism is proving that women are just as good as men, and putting these ladies on the back of the bills isn't saying, these male presidents, they were nothing, we're better. No, it's saying we had as much to do with the progression of our country, the growing of our country, as much as the men did. That's what it's saying. And I think it's wonderful that they're doing it, because now that I think, if you really think about it, with the elections, a lot of racism has been boiling. You know, people have become a lot more sensitive to the issues of race. The Trump supporters beating on the Blacks, Hispanics, non-supporters. I think it's great that they put that because not only, like I said, it's diversity. It's diversity on our bills. It's reminding them, look, you guys can hate this, you guys can hate on everyone else if you want, but this is what our country was brought up on. This is what this is how we started. We started first by the Civil Rights Act. We stopped segregation, out with the Jim Crow laws and the separate but equal spheres, out with that, women's rights. That's how we started progressing. That is why we are who we are today. And I think that's just wonderful. It's not because women are better, it's because we had just as much to do with bringing our country to the standards that we are right now.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens in 2020 when all of this gets into effect. So let's go to our next question. On Tuesday, Utah state legislators declared pornography as a public health hazard. In the resolution, it calls for research, education, and policy change to address the epidemic that has harmed the citizens of Utah and the rest of the country. Do you think they have do you think that they have? Do you agree with their point of view? Do you think that pornography is harming the nation? So we'll go with you, Nikiya.
I mean, maybe because I live in Vegas and I'm kind of numb to this topic. I never thought of it as that big of an issue, but they're relating it to sexual assault, and that it relates to that and it leads to that. I mean, if you want to relate it to that, I mean, I guess it is a problem, but I mean, it's okay with Utah because they're just putting a highlight on it. They're not really banning anything. They're just focusing more research on it and trying to help people that may have problems with pornography. So I'm okay with it as long as they're not trying to ban anything.
All right. What about you, David? What do you think?
Well, it's non-binding, so it's basically saying we think this is bad, but we're not introducing any law to do it. But it's not going to have any effect. Something to bear in mind is, as you mentioned, Utah has the highest rates of pornography consumption in the entire country. Specifically, Provo, Utah has the highest rates of pornography consumption in the country. And what we know academically, at least, is that pornography consumption exists in places where it is the most conservative or where whatever is taking place is repressed. So Pakistan has the highest consumption of gay pornography. Because gay men are just completely shunned. So they go to, for their source of expression, they go online. And Utah is, of course, first colonized by Mormons. It's at least half the state is Mormon. So you still have a lot of very explicit conservatancy there. And so for those that are sexually repressed, this is their outlet.
You know, and as you stated, this resolution doesn't have, any teeth, as the Salt Lake Tribune said. So do you think that this resolution should have some bite at least, or no?
Well, it depends on what its intention is. If they have something, if they believe, if the Utah legislatures have some belief that some action that they will take will reduce violent crime, which I hope would be the point of it, because otherwise then they're just infringing on freedom of expression, which that's really what it is, then they should do it. But otherwise, they're just going to sit up here and take this moral high ground and say that pornography is bad and just push a really conservative view of the predominant religion that's there and just act like they're making progress when they're not, and people get time in the limelight.
So James, as you know, I'm going to piggyback on what Nikiya said. Mm-hmm. And in the resolution, it does state that sex offenders do start off by, watching porn at a young age and then, become what they do become. So do you agree with that statement?
Well, in order to understand that statement, I would pull off from David's last statement. He was saying that repression in certain areas leads to people needing an outlet. And Utah definitely is one of those areas where it is heavily repressed. As David noted, you have an area significantly made up of a Mormon population, people that are made up of very high principle, one of which is against pornography, of course. But according to a Harvard Business Report in 2009, it showed that the state of Utah is the highest per capita rate of adult purchases of adult entertainment. So just looking at that, you are seeing a sort of bark back or response back to this very high purchase of adult entertainment. And the more you repress it, the more it comes out. I mean, if you really just strip down this resolution, you're able to see what it's really trying to show off. And what it's really trying to show off is that it's trying to equate pornography equates to violence against women and children. And that is simply information that is null. It is based upon facts and information that are infactual and uninformative. This bill, like you said, has no teeth, and thank goodness, because it sucks.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Oh, hey, bud.
Oh.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
It's a school night. With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
Not sure about those two. I've been meaning to ask you. This is tougher than I thought. Is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No?
I hope not, because alcohol can lead you to say things and do things that you really wish you hadn't. Isn't this what you're supposed to say?
I know.
So if any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you.
Ryan.
Yeah?
So start the conversation even before they're teenagers.
Good idea.
For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Welcome back. So back to our topic on the pornography issue in Utah. What are your thoughts, Yesica?
Well, I know that they made it a resolution simply because they can't ban it. Technically, I mean, as far as obscenity goes, it's not protected under the First Amendment because of the obscenity clause. However, it's way too controversial to ban the whole thing. So therefore, they made it a resolution. So from what I understand, though, is that the governor tried to make a separate legislation from that resolution to track pedophiles, to track people obtaining child pornography. And that was one of the aims of that resolution. However, first off, it's unconstitutional because there's a certain level of privacy that they're going to be invading just to try to get to that information. Second off, people are getting way too creative. You know, if they can't watch something, they're gonna find another way to do it, like movies. If you can't watch movies, pirate it. If we do music, you can't download music, illegal music download. So they're always gonna find a way. I honestly think that they're just imposing their opinion on the residents. They're just imposing their own beliefs on it, just because they think. But the whole sex offenders started watching porn. Well, guess what? A lot of the new generation professionals that are going into the workforce have started out watching porn. I mean, How many college students, honestly?
Right. So. Well, with that, we'll go to our next topic and we'll see what happens down there. Well, not down there, but next to our neighbors in Utah. So, the Senate has a bill that will help relax some mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent criminals. This is a bipartisan bill, but the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will not let the bill on the floor. The leading Republican sponsoring the bill, Chuck Grassley, is scavenging to get Republican votes to sponsor the bill. His main targets are those Republicans who are out there for re-election. Why this move? Why, David?
Well, at least something that crosses my mind, whether or not it's factual, it just seems to be this way, is that the Koch brothers especially, who, as we know, they probably donate the most out of any individuals to political campaigns, specifically conservative ones. One of the issues that they've wanted to focus on is doing some prison reform when it comes to mandatory minimums and the like. And because these are people that are getting reelected, it strikes me as the possibility that those who would support this would curry more favor with those that would donate to their cause, i.e. the Koch brothers, because the Koch brothers believe in this. Now, I do believe that there really needs to be some prison and sentencing reform. I really dislike mandatory minimums in that, you know, each case in and of itself, it's an individual case, it's an individual set of circumstances, and I really don't like taking a decision out of the hands of a judge, someone with, by the time they become a judge, decades worth of legal experience, who is here looking at the specific facts of this specific case and using their judgment to judge, as is their job, and give the corrective, you know, punishment that's needed. Our system is based upon rehabilitation. It is not based upon equaling the ledger. It's not lex talionis, law, you know, eye for an eye. It's not based upon doing everything that we can to prevent people from committing crimes like in Iran, where it's if you're gay, then we're going to have a wall thrown on you to kill you. Our point of this system is for rehabilitation. It's based upon the Greeks, and I do believe that this is a good step towards treating citizens as citizens, that even if you do make a bad decision or a mistake, that you should pay the price, but you can receive mercy when necessary.
So, James, what do you think? Do you think that this bill will be effective in accomplishing its mission?
I do. I think it'll be very effective as long as it overcomes the obstacles that Republicans have put in its way. Looking at the bulk and really the bullet points of this bill, you have revisions to sentencing laws, reduced mandatory minimum sentences, and also it's trying to reduce the recidivism rates that these inmates face. And the only con that real Republicans have to this is that they're worried that real violent criminals will be gallivanting in the streets. There will be the oversought convicts that are just let loose upon easy citizenry. But the real crime here is not that upon the criminals, but is not passing this bill.
But why would Republicans be against the bill if it's being sponsored by a Republican and not just some regular Republican, a very leading high official Republican in the Senate?
Well, I can tell you, and this might be obvious to anyone that might be able to walk into some sort of Republican Party room, that is definitely split. Republicans themselves, and I'm sure David might be able to speak to this on some extent, have been split. Just because a giant Republican leader comes out for this bill doesn't mean that the split between Republicans currently creates any sort of niche groups that are going to oppose or support this bill. That is to be expected in this Trump era we live in of Republicanism.
So, Yesica, being a criminal justice major, what do you think about this bill?
Well, just sort of what he said, like, I very much believe in leaving it up to the judge. The thing with criminal justice is that it's so specific. Everything changes it. One little element, and it's like a completely different case. So I'm not too convinced with the whole reducing mandatory sentencing. It all depends on what crime, because there's, like, for example, I don't completely agree with the 5 to 10 years for drug use. Mm-hmm. I think that's a little ridiculous. I think they should focus more on the sentencing for violent criminals, for criminals with more severe crimes, than the misdemeanor and nonviolent criminals. But it all depends on the crime, again, because, and not only that, I believe that the one point that I was reading, I'm not super into it, but from what I hear is the Republicans that are opposing this bill are very tough on crime, and their main argument was because, yeah, we're focusing on the nonviolent criminals, but what are we doing to keep the violent criminals in there? Like, they don't think that we're being too tough on crime. So I guess that was one of the oppositions to it. But as a criminal justice major, like, I believe that, no offense, I think politicians should really just stay out of it. Yeah. Because they don't know what's going on. They don't really know the law like we do. Right. They don't see the effects of it.
And I agree with Yesica. There has to be someone on the uninformed side, and thankfully those people have filled that apt area.
So, my final question, I'll pass it to you, Nikiya. So, earlier this year, President Obama released nonviolent criminals from a federal prison. Do you think that this bill is in response to what he did earlier in the year?
I have a feeling that it's unrelated. maybe people start thinking about that more and put it into the bill. But from my understanding is that they had a reduction of sentencing for nonviolent criminals, and then they had a lack of support from Republicans. So then they changed it and didn't and took that out to gain more support. So I think the whole issue is just trying to gain support for this bill and get it through. But I was just thinking, like, how do politicians know exactly what they should put? I mean, they're not really in the trenches, like in the community, figuring out what is best for citizens who go through the criminal process.
Right. Well, we'll see. Though they do say, our politicians do say that they do go and talk to their constituents and this and that, but, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Yeah. So we'll just see what happens if they, if this passes in the Senate or it gets killed during the lame duck session. But with that, that's all the time that we have. I just want to thank our panelists for coming by. Please follow us on Facebook at UNLV Scramble and on Twitter at UNLV The Scramble. Also, email us your opinions at unlvscramble@gmail.com. For further discussion, we want to hear you answer our weekly question. Is North Carolina on the wrong side of history with its passage of the bathroom laws? Let us know. Thank you for watching and see you next time.